when I first started learning about fire, and my dream was to like be a great dad, and I wanted to have kids and a patch of land for them to grow up and just be able to spend time with them. And so I guess over time, as I learned more about fire, and particularly with my career, I was away a lot, working like ridiculous hours overtime. And it was this dream about, having my own time back and being able to be a great dad, I guess, was my driver. When I was reading Mr. Money Moustache, like he talked a lot about how his now ex and they were able to reach financial independence and then be awesome parents. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing.
The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etchman from Tash Invest and Anna Christina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast,
where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us. Very excited. I've got Pete on, who is also known as Captain FI on the show today, who has retired early and has reached financial independence, and we'll dive deep into that. But first, what is your money win or loss of the day?
G'day, Anna. Thanks for having me on. Money loss. Look, I've got two that spring to mind. First, we recently bought a Kia Carnival, a second-hand late model, like 2019, and it's awesome. And because it's a second-hand vehicle, 6 years old, all of the depreciation's pretty much happened. So we were able to grab that for, I think it was $25,000 instead of a new one, which was like $70,000. And it's a massive upgrade for us from my 2006 station wagon Forester in manual. Yeah. This one's automatic, so that's awesome. My wife loves it. I guess that's our huge money win. And my money loss, I didn't want to spend a couple of $1,000s like buying a prefabricated chicken coop for our hobby farm. And I said, no, I can build this for cheaper than that. And I started building it, and my friend was helping me, and I've somehow spent like nearly $10,000.
And time and energy and all of that on top of it, I'm sure.
So unfortunately that one's a money lose. But we're hoping, hey, with the price of eggs, you never know, maybe we can turn it around. And,
fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, those are big money wins and losses. I love those. My big money loss, I don't remember if I said this on the podcast. I don't think I did, but we were supposed to go to Europe to visit family, and then instead had a family member be sick. So we decided to change our flights and go to Canada. And so that's a loss of a couple $1,000s because I already booked all our flights, booked our hotels. So we'll be losing out, I think, around $3,000, which is so sad. But the flip side, this is where I'm trying to be positive, is that in Canada, at least we have accommodations. We're staying with family. It's going to be a bit easier. The dollar isn't as bad in terms of like the euro. So I think it'll even itself out, or at least that's what I'm telling myself. But it is so hard because airlines now are just... it's not as easy to get money back on flights as it was during COVID time.
Absolutely, yeah. And the more and more I, hear and talk about airlines, they're really slowly turning into banks. So a lot of them don't really make a lot of money on the actual flights these days. It's all on the bonus points, the credit cards, the associated health insurance, and that kind of stuff. So so that's probably what, like, their margins are pretty thin. So I can that may be why they're starting to get a bit tetchy when it comes to refunds and rescheduling. But it sounds like you're going to come out ahead there, Anna.
I hope so. That's the thing, like especially with the dollar. I'm trying to. It was going to cost us a lot because we were jumping around to 3 different locations and so forth. But the reason you know so much about airlines and whatnot is because you used to be a pilot, or you potentially still are. Can you tell us your fire journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So like most people on the journey to fire, I had a good job and got paid, I guess, higher than average income. I didn't actually start my career as a pilot, but it was something I always wanted to do. I didn't have like the funds coming out of high school. So, I guess I should acknowledge, like, I did get a scholarship. So I started out in engineering and I had a degree that was fully paid for and I was paid to study, right? So I had a massive head start, like, on this FIRE journey, which I didn't even realize at the time what FIRE was or just sort of how important that would be. All I saw was, okay, I'm going to get a degree in something I'm vaguely interested in, which was aeronautical engineering, planes, and I'm going to get money that I can then spend on flying lessons. So whilst I was at uni, put all of my attention and focus and effort onto getting as many sort of side hustles and different jobs and things. And, I was buying and selling things and tutoring high school students just to sort of get some extra cash to pay for these flying lessons. And eventually I got qualified. I'm a bit embarrassed to actually say how much I spent on my flight lessons, probably a bit more than your average person.
But possibly it's worked itself out as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Look, and I would say the lessons that I learned as a pilot definitely helped me in other areas of my life and, maturity and decision-making and things like that. So look, I got my commercial pilot's license in, I think it was like 2011 or 2012.
Did that open the doors financially for you at that point?
Well, less than you'd think. The industry is a bit tricky. And once you've spent, 100, 150, sometimes 200,000 to earn a commercial pilot's license and an instrument rating, which you need to fly in essentially poor weather, you're at the bottom of the pecking order and you're sort of qualified to now essentially lose money flying in general aviation in light aircraft, doing scenic flights and surveying and that kind of stuff. And I think it was like end of 2017 is when I started, flying internationally around the world. Most people who sort of familiar with my blog or my story would know, I'm a little bit vague on talking about everyone, what company do you work for? Because HR at the time didn't really want me talking about it. But I suppose...
So did they know that you were blogging at that? Were you blogging at that time? Or how does your FIRE journey come into it? How did you start getting into the FIRE movement?
No, so it's a really good question. So basically, once I qualified and had started earning good money as a pilot, I still had these habits of like frugality. And I'm going to say this is not 100% like a positive thing because it's taken me a long while to get over the sort of scarcity mindset, right? From growing up, in a single parent, low income household. And so I was just, my frugality muscles are super strong, right? So I still didn't, like, my lifestyle didn't change. And all of a sudden I had all this money pouring in and I was like, oh crap, I need to do something with this. And so, I think I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And, I didn't quite understand, like, what does it mean, pay yourself first? Like, I just couldn't understand that concept. And then I sort of read a couple other books and started getting onto, blogs online. I think I discovered Mr. Money Mustache. I read The Barefoot Investor, which was like awesome because it sort of spelled everything out in a super easy way. And and then it kind of dawned on me, pay yourself first means invest money on payday and then live off the rest.
So what was your first investment?
Okay, well, I actually tried to buy a house down the road from my mum's house, and it didn't go well. Like, the real estate agent was obviously just like playing hardball. That's their job, to try and get the best price for the seller. But for some reason, I took it really personally, like them ghosting me and sort of playing mind games. And I basically just told him to stuff off. And I think I chucked all of my money in, it's a long enough time. I mean, can I mention names of like banks or products? Or?
Yeah, sure. None of this is endorsed.
And I'll point out.
Please do your own research. Yes.
I'm not saying like it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. But I just used a managed fund with a bank called Colonial First State. And I think most banks have these managed fund options. Anyway, sorry, Colonial First State, but it was a terrible investment. The fees were like super high, and I didn't really even know what it was invested in. I just got like bunches of like glossy pamphlets and brochures. So obviously a lot of the budget must have been spent on on advertising or something.
That's similar to my experience in Canada. Like people would put you in managed funds that the bank would run, and the fees were something like 2.2%. It's the highest in the world in Canada at the time. I don't know what they are now, but yeah, similarly, I was like in a managed fund, didn't really know what I was investing in, but I was like, I just know it's good for my retirement.
Yeah.
At that time, were you actually thinking that you wanted to retire early or have financial independence, or was it just hey, I have money, I need to do something with this money because I read?
Yeah, no, I was just like obsessed with flying, and I'm like, this is my dream job. I'm going to do anything to do this, and I'll spend whatever it takes. And then, obviously when I was qualified, had this money. So tried to buy a house, didn't work, did the managed fund. And then, was reading, like starting to educate myself, getting onto blogs. I think I discovered Aussie Firebug and like listened to all these podcasts and read the articles. And it was great. And I just was devouring books, anything I could sort of get my hands on. And it sort of dawned on me that, oh crap, I'm paying all these fees. And like, I'm pretty sure the fund underperformed the S&P by something chronic. Like it's a while ago now. So, sorry, I can't quote actual figures, but it was like 30 or 40% or something. And so I was just like, nah, all right. What does old Barefoot say? AFIC. And again, like this is quite embarrassing, but kind of funny. Like I knew AFIC, AFI, which is, I know now it's a listed investment company, but I'd signed up to the stock tipping from the Barefoot Blueprint. Like it's no longer around. It's I think it's kind of like Hot Copper or like the Motley Fool. And they would basically like say, oh yeah, buy these stocks sort of thing. So one of the stocks that he recommended in his subscription was AFIC, like the Australian Foundation Investment Company. And as silly as it sounds, I just thought it was some kind of a construction company, like, oh, foundation investment, like they must make concrete or something. And I was like, well, there's, construction is a massive industry in Australia. So let's buy some concrete company. And so I think it was a big investment too. I think it was like 20 grand or something into AFIC.
A large amount, yeah.
Yeah, I know. And then I was panicking as well because it was like the dividend day. And I remember calling up the company and being like, hey, I'm a new shareholder. Am I going to get this dividend? And this really helpful lady was kind of like, oh, sweetie, you've got a very small amount of shares. Like, don't let this keep you up at night sort of thing. Anyway, I went away and did a bit more research. And, as it turned out, it was actually a good investment for me, but it was very silly in that I didn't really know what I was investing in. I was literally just doing it because, someone popular had said to do it. I guess that had kind of it just influenced me to do it.
That's the challenge with investing, right? Like everyone wants to have advice or personalized advice, but really it depends on your specific circumstance, your risk appetite, what you're investing in, which is why we always say talk to a financial advisor. But it is really important to be educated of what you're investing in.
You need to know what you're doing. You got to take some personal accountability, yeah.
For sure. We did an episode on the difference between LICs and ETFs, or LICs. So if anyone who's interested in that can go check that out, because similarly, when I came to Australia, I was like, what is the difference between these two? Why is everyone talking about LICs? So I guess you started investing in one.
Yeah. And I did the I think it was called like the Blueprint portfolio. So, I bought a bunch of shares and I was like, and it just sort of got complicated and, in the end sort of underperformed. They did all right. I think that, when you can't consider the brokerage. And look, it wasn't huge money. I think I was investing like $1,000 into each of these companies. So,
are you still invested in these companies, or how has your strategy evolved over time?
Yeah, good question. So, essentially, again, I'll preface that with I didn't know really about FIRE, and I was just investing because I was like, oh, I need to grow money because, I want to buy a house and do stuff, right? And so, I was investing in these shares, and it was through the continued learning and, reading FIRE blogs, Mr. Money Mustache and that kind of stuff. And I sort of realized, I think I'm better off to just do something passive index. And so, I started to, I started to get rid of the individual companies that I'd bought, for example, Farm Pride was an egg company that was a hot tip on that. I think I lost 60% or something, and again, it sounds really bad, but I only had $1,000 invested. So I take that as a really cheap lesson in my
Learning.
sort of, I like that. I say to people, get some skin in the game. Like my friends and family, I say, just get some skin in the game. Don't have to invest a lot, just a little bit. And then you'll see it go up and down and you'll start to work out where your preferences lie. But for me, I definitely drifted into those ETFs. So like in index funds and listed investment companies. And, so I was buying a few, I massively overcomplicated it. And then I started blogging and I'm like trying to justify on my blog, like why I'm doing stuff. And I'm like, when it's trading below the net asset value, I'm going to buy it because it's on sale, because I read Value Investing by Warren Buffett and I, fancied myself as the next, the next share trading genius. No, it was all a bit hard. So in the end, I switched to just ETFs. I ended up having 3 ETFs that gave me like global exposure. Fast forward to today, obviously there's been some changes. I now just use like an all-in-one fund, but previously I was using like an American, an Australian, and like a all-world minus America. So essentially like a Europe-Asia fund. And I just sort of was contributing to those.
And when did you reach FIRE? When in this journey?
Yeah, so I mentioned, I basically started earning good. I'll preface this, I was earning good money pretty much the whole time, right? And stacking it away. And it was around 2016 that I stopped throwing money into this black hole that was aviation. And then my salary started really going up, right? After then. And so I was able to live on an average of, it must have been around like 70, 75% if you took a long-term average. Like there were months where I was only spending, 5 or 10% of my pay because I was always working, right? Like work had provided me with accommodation, like meal allowance, like all that kind of good stuff. And like as well, when you're working overseas, there's some like really favorable tax schemes. So it was in the Middle East and that was like basically tax-free dollars because I was not an Australian resident for that period. So I had to, I understand like the privilege that not everybody can do this. But so from 2017 was when I started to get serious with investing. And then I started properly tracking it, I guess, around like 2019. And then it sort of built the snowball. Along the pathway, I will say, I did do a property development, which I was, I'd call myself a silent partner, but I was very vocal the whole time, much to my friend's dismay.
A vocal silent partner.
Yeah, he was very experienced and he'd done several of these. So I basically just, fronted up the cash and took some risk, took a loan, serviceability. And that was really good. Ended up getting, units made at a really low cost base. So we got really good capital, I guess, sweat capital out of that. And then I ended up actually starting to make money online on websites. So 2022, I had built up a pretty sizable portfolio. And by the way, I was doing monthly updates. So if anyone wants to like check out the historical, you can just check out the net wealth updates. And I had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life around 2022, and I was definitely stuck on that, like that just one more itis where you're not really confident to pull the pin because you just want a higher portfolio. You just want a bit more passive income. Just another couple of months, just another year sort of thing. But the universe really just kind of like pushed me to breaking point. I was sort of dealing with, my beautiful mum who had cancer, and unfortunately she has passed away. And I was working interstate, and under a lot of stress, the loss of a big relationship for me with my partner at the time, and it was just like, everything's bubbling over, and it was time to step away. I guess you'd say for mental health reasons. It probably wasn't, safe for me to keep flying when, I didn't really want to put the effort in, and you just think flying's a full-on job, right? Like you can't mess around. Like it's super important to even just like something as simple as like getting the weather and the NOTAMs, which are, like important notes about what is and what isn't broken around and like things you need to be careful of, hazards. You really need to scrutinize those quite closely, and they're not easy to read, right? It's easy to miss stuff, especially if you're like tired or distracted. And I was super distracted, and I didn't want to be responsible for an accident or something like that. So it was just sort of time to step back. And I guess fortunately for me, I was actually also earning money online through my websites, which advertising contracts and affiliate marketing and that kind of stuff. And so that did also give me a bit more confidence. So 22, I stepped down from flying, and I was actually lining up an engineering ground role when I was moving back to Adelaide to look after my mum. And as it turned out, I couldn't do that either. I didn't really, I had my FU money. So I was just like, I just needed time, right?
So you had some hard things happen in your life that kind of forced your hands to essentially reach financial independence. Was it a hard transition at that point to
Absolutely.
move to?
Yeah, it was terrifying. It was terrifying. But look, I should preface this with like, most people are so scared of moving from the accumulation phase into the consumption phase or the drawdown phase. But like, I didn't have to do that because I was like making good money online. And so like in many ways, like,
you still had money coming in. So you still had income coming in. So it wasn't as scary as someone else who's like, I will have no income coming in. Yep.
I felt like a bit of a fire fraud, so it was a much easier decision for me to make. And like I said, I didn't really make the decision. My hands were almost like tied, like I was forced to do this. Otherwise something bad was going to happen. And so I moved back to Adelaide, and I looked after my mom, who unfortunately at the end of the year did pass on.
Yeah, sorry for your loss.
Oh, thanks, Anna. I miss my mum every day. She was just an absolute angel. So lucky that she, because I was a full-on kid, right? Like I was a special needs kid, and so I was really fortunate that she always had my back. But so after she passed, it was a very difficult time, and my now wife and I, we just rented a little flat, and basically, I think I'm probably close to 2 million in ETFs, index funds, and that the dividends, I think it was around 80,000 a year, maybe 80, 70 something, and we weren't spending that. Like my wife was working; she works in the medical field, and we were sharing expenses, and
Was it a challenge when you got together with your wife to talk about financial independence? Were you on the same page, or did you guys have different thoughts on money?
Yeah, really good question. So my wife comes from a pretty wealthy family. Also that came with like really high expectations of her career, and so she had a falling out with her father over this, and which is why she moved to Australia. So she is from the Philippines, from Manila, and so she literally just like, she was telling me she applied for like Canada, Australia, England, US, and it was literally just like the Australian work visa that cleared for her. So she's like, all right, I guess I'm coming to Adelaide, and she worked and did more postgrad study here to get a permanent residency. But I suppose, like when we first got together, her attitude towards money was like, it's there to be enjoyed. So like she worked hard, she earned the money, but she, enjoyed spending the money on experiences and travel and stuff. And no one had really told her about, super or investing or anything like that. And I suppose she probably felt secure enough that she didn't need to stress about that. And I think maybe coming from like quite a wealthy family where they have really high incomes and also like quite a large net wealth with big family business, there probably wasn't, like she really had an abundance mentality. Like for her, money flowed freely to her, and she could spend it generously and on her friends and on experiences and things. So I definitely think I brought the money anxiety into the relationship. And
the frugality mindset versus the abundance mindset.
Look, and she's not a spendthrift either. Like she doesn't waste money. Like she would spend freely on things she loves, but she doesn't waste money or anything like that. So
often you need the balance though, right? Because I find that sometimes frugal people really need someone to push them to spend their money. Like you can't just hoard a bunch of cash. Whereas the flip side is also true of the spenders, where they might be able to reel it in a bit. So it's nice to find that balance.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like I think, even just from like my work where I was like always living in hotels and eating in restaurants, and I was like, oh, I'm so sick of this. I just want to have like a home cooked meal. Whereas my wife is just like, she loves the idea of going out to a restaurant and trying new meals. Like that's just her absolute idea of heaven would be, to do that. But yeah, so it was when we were dating, obviously like, you didn't have to bring it up straight away. I think I told her like I was just taking some time off and looking after mum, and I can't actually recall how those first few conversations went. But, like I was renting like quite a nice apartment. And so, I suppose she probably knew that I was switched on financially. The old car gives it away as well, Like she told me she used to have a boyfriend that wasn't very good with money, but always drove like a flash brand new car and had like a suit and a nice watch and everything. Whereas she's like, oh, all your stuff is old, secondhand. Okay, you probably have money tucked away.
Yeah. It's sometimes what is it? Wealth isn't always seen, right? But
yeah. Well, I mean, wealth should be quiet, right? But our relationship grew over time, which was awesome. My wife, she's super compassionate and super helpful as well with my mum going through her treatment, her palliative care, and I just fell in love with my wife, and more and more every day, and
now you have a child.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
so life is completely changed as well.
Yeah, life is, it's different.
And how does that change once you reach financial independence and have a family?
Well, I think like we're very fortunate. And one of the things when I first started learning about fire, and, I guess I didn't have a dad growing up. My parents were separated. My dad was out of the picture. He lived overseas and he never really contributed, which made it really hard for my mum. And so in many ways, my dream was to like be a great dad, and I wanted to have kids and, have a patch of land for them to grow up and just be able to spend time with them. And so I guess over time, as I learned more about fire, and particularly with my career, I was away a lot, working like ridiculous hours overtime. And, I was going overseas for, several months at a time. It was this dream about, having my own time back and being able to be a great dad, I guess was my driver. And so when I was reading Mr. Money Mustache, like he talked a lot about how his ex, and he, by just not being ridiculous consumers and having a good salary in IT, they were able to reach financial independence and then be awesome parents. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it really resonated with me, and it was something that I wanted to do.
It reduces some of the stress, right? Like a lot of relationships have fights around finances or money management, and it just removes one of those layers of stress that can come within a relationship, because it's hard enough having a family, let alone the financial stress of paying the bills.
Yeah, I was tallying. So I recently did like a net wealth update. I'm doing them every 3 months now because it was just too much work doing it monthly, sorry. Like I was looking back at like previous spending. And so when we were just like renting an apartment when we were kid free in Adelaide, oh gosh, don't quote me. I think it was like under 70,000. It might have been like around $60,000 to $70,000. That was
for
like
both of
combined.
You?
Yeah, for both of us, combined household spending. And we were initially going 50-50 on everything. And then actually, this is interesting. I'll bring this up because I copped a bit of flack for this online recently. I remember I said to my girlfriend at the time, right? I said to her, because we weren't engaged or married. I was like, oh, do you want I'll pay more of the bills if you are happy to invest the difference, if that makes sense. Because we were going 50-50 on everything. And I'm like, how about I pay 2/3, you pay 1/3, but then, that money that you save, whatever it is, 16%, would you be happy to put that into your investments, like your super and your shares? Which, she was like, yeah, hell yeah, no brainer. I'll do that. But yeah, some people didn't like that online, and they said it was a bit controlling. But I just point out that, like, you know, it was like, I wasn't saying you have to do this. Like, she was happy to do it.
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, money is personal, and there's a lot of different ways that you can split up bills that people don't think about. For so long, people think 50-50. One of the things that my partner and I did is we did pay 50-50 of our expenses, and then that eventually changed to a percentage of what our income is. So I was a higher income earner, therefore I was paying more in terms of the expenses, and my partner was paying less. And then eventually it swapped again. And I know a lot of people will do other things. Well, they'll be like, I'll pay groceries and rent, and you pay, you know, everything else, depending on what the split is. So I think it's very personal to how people want to split money. And this, I actually haven't heard your suggestion before, where it's like, how about we still do 50-50, but I'll pay more. You pay the difference into investing so that you can set yourself up for a financial future, which is really great. I mean, there's co-contribution and salary splitting that people do, especially when a person goes on parental leave, that you can actually put money into your partner's super. So there's different ways to think about how to split money and make it more equitable, but it is personal, right? Like, at the end of the day, what works for you might not work for someone else, but I'm always a huge advocate of making sure you do have some money in your own bank account, in just your own name, regardless of what you do, in the case something happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone definitely needs an emergency fund. But yeah, equitable, I think that's like the key word you said, like equitable, not equal. So yeah, I mean, once we, and she, you know, my wife has done amazing. Like, she's just like hit like 100K like net wealth in her name through like her super, her savings, and her shares. And also, like, she's paid off like a ridiculous amount of debt, student debt. Like, you know, she didn't have like credit card loans or anything, but yeah, so she had obviously tuition from master's degrees and that kind of stuff. So yeah, super, super proud of her. And I suppose, like, as our relationship grew deeper and as she was getting like better and better at money, it really helped alleviate some of my anxiety over the relationship. So for example, like when we first got together, before we lived together, like we got a binding financial arrangement, like a prenup, right?
A prenup, yeah.
Just because, you know, he was me with, you know, like 2 million net assets, and she was like technically in debt from her student loans. And, you know, whilst I wanted to give the relationship every chance of flourishing, and I'm so glad it did, I equally wanted to like protect myself of, you know, 14 plus years in the workforce. I didn't want to kind of get taken to the cleaners, and I don't know if that would have happened. I don't know if that's just like, you know, fear and anxiety that gets perpetuated online and stuff. But I think
prenups get such a bad rep because people are like, oh, you're already planning to break up. But the way I love to think about it is you're writing an agreement while you love each other, while you care for each other, while you're thinking rationally of the assets that are at play, so that everyone can be protected. So it's in the best interest of everyone, right? And obviously you want to protect yourself, so that if it does come to a place where a couple has to go their separate ways, it was written at a time out of love, as opposed to having to be in a place of animosity or sadness or anger. So I'm a huge advocate, provided it's fair and everyone's in agreement in terms of signing it, because you do need a lawyer. This isn't something that you can just write on the back of a napkin here in Australia.
Oh yeah, it was expensive. I think it was about $5,000 or $6,000 all up, if I remember. You know, and she, you know, she had to seek independent legal advice about it as well before, you know, she's allowed to sign it. So, but yeah, no, it was good. And obviously the situation's changed a lot now. I suppose it's a very long-winded explanation for about me firing, because I think it was towards the end of, well, it was the end of 2023, after, you know, a year or so of, was that a year? Maybe 18 months of being, you know, quote unquote fired and having this dividend income stream. And my accountant kept saying like, you're getting all these dividends, you're not even spending them, you're reinvesting them, you're having to pay tax. It's not very tax efficient. Have you considered just bringing forward your plans and buying a slightly more house than you need, and just thinking that, and having your wealth being, I guess, tax-free in a primary place of residence. And so, you know, I think he said, look for something that's, you know, slightly more than what you have now, and under 5 acres. And so we did. And yeah, we ended up finding a beautiful place in in Queensland, just in the hills, in southeast Queensland.
So this was you speaking to a financial advisor or
Actually,
an accountant?
my accountant. Yeah. And it's funny, I used to when I got on the fire hype train, I was like, oh, financial advisors are bad. They just want to get a percentage of your money. And, because don't get me wrong, there are some shit ones out there. But I think as I learned more and more about finance, you really see how important financial advisors can be, but not just for the advice, but the timing of the advice,
the timing, the strategy, the projections, the ideas that you have. Because even for you and I, who are quite financially literate, we understand finance. There's always these little rules and things that we might not have thought of in combination with each other based on this particular time and place, and based on 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, etc. So I'm a huge advocate of talking to financial advisors or tax accountants at the right time when you think you need them, especially, for example, if you're planning on taking parental leave or having a kid or buying a property or changing your financial strategy, or if you've come to a lot of money, right? Because that can absolutely change your game plan and your future goals.
Yeah, 100%. I wish I'd done it at the start.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so in fact, I literally just this morning, I just paid the capital gains tax. So what happened was I had about 2 million in shares, sold them, and obviously I had some of those shares for quite a number of years, and they had grown well. So yeah, I had a big tax bill due, and so pretty much my emergency fund just got destroyed. But that's okay. Paying tax is normal, and it means we made money. But yeah, you could have just been more strategic about it. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah, I feel the same way at one point when I look back. I don't know if there's really any way around it, to be honest, because I had the shares, sold the shares, used that as a deposit, and then took a loan for the remainder. And not everyone has this. And again, my mum was amazing, and she worked incredibly hard her whole life, and she had paid her mortgage off. She paid her house off. And after she died, that was in the estate, and that was sold, and I received a portion of that, and I've basically been able to use that to pay down a big chunk of the debt that I had to buy the farm. And by refinancing to a lower ongoing rate, absorbing the funds into the redraw, I think is the terminology, it's lowered the monthly repayment that I have to make on the house. So again, super grateful. What an amazing gift. She was really an amazing woman.
It seems like you learned a lot of lessons from your mom in terms of frugality and finances as well along the way. Yeah, so that's really important. And that's why generational wealth and teaching our kids about money is a step further, right? And surely you're probably thinking about that when your bub grows up a bit, how you're going to teach your kid about money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So look, it's funny, I was fire for nearly 2 years. And then it was time to sort of push myself out of the comfort zone. Yeah. Bought this amazing hobby farm, and it's lush. We've planted so many trees. It's great. We're getting sheep soon and chickens. And yeah, we're really having a lot of fun. And it was pretty much as soon as we got in and my wife and I were trying, right, for quite a while. And we were having issues with fertility, but once we settled in the house and we'd moved in, she got pregnant straight away. It was awesome. So I guess perhaps the stress melting away kind of allowed that. And it's been great. And yeah, so now obviously life has changed with the arrival of our child. I feel like I'm really fortunate in that I'm in a position where I can begin to now use some of that money to make our life a bit easier. So, previously I'm I'm not paying someone to, help out on the farm. I'm going to mow all the lawns. I'll do all the trimming. I'll do all the weeding, all the spraying, all that kind of maintenance. But wow, oh my gosh, those first 6 weeks, why did no one tell me how hard it was going to be?
I'll tell you how hard it is. It's absolutely hard. And sometimes it doesn't get easier for a long time, as some kids don't sleep through the night for a couple years. So it's absolutely hard, which is why having finances at your disposal can make your life easier, right? Like, this is that big argument about, can money buy happiness? It might not buy happiness directly, but what it can do is alleviate stress, makes your life easier, gives you opportunity, gives you time. That's essentially what you're paying for. Getting someone else to mow your lawn so you can hang out with bub and mum is so much more valuable than you saving money and mowing your own lawn, for example, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess like I'm fortunate in that, you know, I still am able to have income coming in. So, you know, I feel like I was FIRE and then like massively traded it in for like a lifestyle inflation. We're super happy now here though. And it's really, this is where we will live for the next, 30 years at least, and raise our kids, a beautiful home, lots of space to grow into.
Because you and your wife have different financial backgrounds, and you were just talking about her net worth being different than yours. Does that change the plan in terms of working? Like you've fired, and it sounds from what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that she has not. Does that, but your dividends covers some of your expenses. Does that change the trajectory of her working career? Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, when we were living together in Adelaide and renting, obviously, I was, for all intents, quote unquote retired. I was actually, working, I suppose, as a full-time unpaid carer for my beautiful mum, which actually was an amazing opportunity just to reconnect and have that time with her. But yeah, my partner, she was still working. And then after my mum passed, she took time off, I guess, so that she could support me through my grief and my loss. We spent a couple of months traveling and visiting her family, and my head was spinning, right? When we got back to Australia, she wanted to change roles anyway. She'd recently completed a master's degree. And so, we moved to a new place in the hills, and she got a new job. She was sort of at work and I was not. I was just sort of twiddling with the websites and had the dog, and I guess taking a bit of a breather. And so now that we moved up here, gosh, it does feel like a full-time job sometimes, just maintaining the property. And I do try to keep doing some work on my website portfolio, blogging, podcasting, that kind of thing. And then obviously now we have the baby. Now, my wife suffered tremendous morning sickness in her first trimester, and so she was just not able to work, and especially with like the stress of moving up, being in a new area, not having support. So basically, I had sort of said, look, I'm happy to, I'll support the household, and like you don't have to work if you don't want to. And she's like, great. And she, had like savings and stuff that she'd built up. So, she was still using some of her own funds for things. And then, just like if she wanted to go see a movie or something like that. Whereas like I would cover like, the maintenance, the rates, the electricity, food, all that kind of stuff.
Are your finances combined now, or are they still separate?
So we have combined and separate. It's kind of weird, but I'll explain more. She got a job second trimester, and like, when she started feeling better, and she was enjoying that. She was enjoying like being able to like use that money for her investments. And then I sort of said, well, look, I'm happy to keep covering all of the household expenses and like spending money and stuff. If you just, do you want to just like put that in your super? So that's pretty much what she was doing. She was just investing pretty much everything she was earning. And then coming up to like near the birth, towards the end, obviously just, it became really hard. So she was working casually, right? So we need to look into this, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure she's not eligible for any of the like paid parental leave and all that kind of stuff, unfortunately. So I pretty much just pay for everything now. And like I put money, we have like joint account and money goes into the joint account, and then like we'll use that for, groceries, household bills, etc. And then obviously money comes out of that for like the mortgage and stuff. So yeah, nothing too exciting, but it's working for us.
It's always interesting to hear how other people manage their money. Is always something that people want to know, right? Like get different ideas if people are doing things, how they think about money, and so forth.
Yeah, and so it's good. So like we can she puts money into her shares, and I actually don't know if she's done it for a while, but yeah, we need to look into the super contributions. And I know we were just kind of talking about this briefly before we went on air. That's something we'll be looking into. But like I guess our plan really is to pay off remaining debt. So with about $500,000 to go on the house, I don't think my wife's really is interested in going back to work anytime soon. Like she's loving being at home. I'm loving like the flexibility of, I guess working online, work from home. And we kind of like, it's just awesome to be home with the baby. And so like going back to, you mentioned like how does like having a baby change fire? Well, like I can't imagine trying to do this with 2 conventional full-time jobs. Like my hat goes off to parents that do this, especially like multiple children. Like we only have 1 kid, and like sometimes it's exhausting. So yeah, I'm just in awe of like, for example, what my mum was able to achieve,
Yeah, it's much easier.
The mind boggles.
Yeah, it's much easier if you have financial independence, if you have money behind you, because it is extremely hard. Like some of the conversations I have with parents, specifically mothers who are planning on having kids, is trying to get as high of a paid job that you can before you leave, trying to invest as much as you can before you take parental leave, trying to do what you can beforehand, because it is so much harder when you're juggling a child. And especially if your child goes to early childhood education and care, that's a huge cost, like the equivalent of rent. So it's just a lot. If you can do as much as you can before having kids, that's a huge bonus. But for a lot of us, we're not as fortunate as you, but we're learning, right? We're learning along the way so that we can have some of those opportunities as well in the future.
Yeah, and like that's, we're starting to research looking into like the family tax benefit, and, which is fun. Like someone's like, oh, a friend of mine like scoffed at me and it's like, oh, why are you applying for like government benefits? You're like a millionaire. And I was like, well, actually the house is not as part of it's not counted in like the means test. So yeah, we have like a big, beautiful farm, but, because the income's not super high, like I'm pretty sure we actually are eligible. So we've just been so sleep deprived with Bub, and like we've had other stuff going on in our personal life. Unfortunately, we've had like quite a number of sort of close family members that are really quite sick at the moment, and unfortunately probably aren't ever going to get better. So we recently had a trip to Adelaide to sort of farewell a couple of family members, including my dad, my wife's uncle. And yeah, it was, so it's hard. Like everything feels harder now with the baby, just feel sleep deprived. So yeah, like it's almost like, I didn't have this perspective when I was younger, especially when I was like blogging earlier, and, people are like, how the hell are you saving 80%, 70% of your paycheck? And I'm like, oh, it's not that hard. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and don't spend as much. And
that was always the challenge for me, reading fire bloggers, especially men who potentially are in higher earning jobs, who have really very little expenses. There's things that don't get discussed a lot, like women having to pay the pink tax or having to look good, which costs a lot of money. These are additional costs that maybe get scoffed at. But if you don't look good and if you aren't putting makeup on, you are less likely to get a promotion at work, or, like research shows that. So it's extremely hard, because as much as we want to be gender equitable, it's not always equal, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so yeah, I definitely need it's definitely going to give myself a bit of an uppercut when I read some of my old blog posts, and
we all learn.
I definitely feel like, I feel like I've got a lot more compassion now for parents, especially for, mums. And yeah, things aren't as easy for everyone as it is as for you. Because honestly, again, I feel like jerk saying this, but it was effortlessly easy for me with a no commitments and a really high paying job to save and get myself into a position. It's almost like, like the rich get richer and the poor have children. It's a joke my granddad used to always say. I don't know who actually said that, but that was just something he always said. And so my mum used to joke around and say that as well, but it's bloody true. And kids ain't cheap, as I can see in the background.
Yeah. I'd love to know your thoughts. For someone who is starting out, who is single, who's starting their FIRE journey, what advice would you give them? And then counter to that, what advice would you give someone who's starting their FIRE journey with a family?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this the other day, actually. And look, I would say, education's super important. But as you mentioned earlier, we all have blind spots, right? And there's little loops and things that you probably should be aware of. So, I would probably go back and eat my words. And instead of saying cook at home and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, I would say get some proper financial advice. I would say go and speak to a fee for service, quote unquote, independent financial advisor. So someone who's not going to say, hey, I'm going to invest you in this fund and take a percentage cut. Literally just go and pay. And you might even need to pay a couple of grand for a statement of advice. You just go and find someone and be like, all right, what's the hourly rate? Cool. $100 to $300 an hour. And just sit down with them for a couple of hours and figure out what your plan is. So I think a lot of people focus on the what, the end goal, financial independence. Oh, I want to be retired. I'm going to do this. Well, if you sort of can sit down with a financial advisor and maybe even a therapist, I think financial advisors at some, they have to do psychology training as well, right?
A lot of money coaches do that. So that's where some of that gap is. Lots of money coaches do the education and the support because they can't give personal financial advice, but often they help with that managing.
Yeah, it's all linked. It's linked. The whole reason I wanted FIRE basically comes down to, growing up pretty poor and wanting more control back over my life and feeling very controlled in my job. So actually being quote unquote FIRE wasn't some magical happy button that just my problems all went away. Actually some of my problems got worse after I, quote unquote retired. Purpose is important. So, I would say go back to the step one, go to the how and figure out, go to step one, go to the why and try and figure out why do I want to do this? Why am I interested in FIRE? Yeah, you got to kind of work out your motivations, right? And then if you're able to speak to someone, a appropriately qualified and licensed advisor, they can kind of step you through that and you can go from the why to the how to the what. So as opposed to just sort of getting fixated on oh, here's a bright shiny object investment property, or I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to buy X amount of shares. Yeah, if you just sort of go back to your why, I think that'd probably be my big number one takeaway. So it's not a sexy, cool, flashy thing.
But it's very different than what you would have said before, right? Because you said that you were anti-financial advisors and now it's completely different.
Yeah, I would have been just cook at home and buy index funds. I mean, don't get me wrong, consistently spending less than you earn and investing the difference, that is the key to reaching financial independence. But I think more important than that is understanding sort of why you even want to do it in the first place. It's not, if you think reaching FIRE is going to make you happy, it might not actually do that. So maybe you just need to shift jobs or something, or work on yourself. But
Amazing. Pete, thank you so much for this conversation, and hopefully we inspire other people to reach financial independence. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, no worries, Anna. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Again, we were saying before the show, I apologize. I'm a bit of a sleep-deprived haze, so hopefully I haven't been too rambly. But no, it's been absolutely my pleasure to be on the pod with you today. Look, I have a blog, captainfire.com. I have a podcast. I need to put some more episodes out soon. It's been a while. And on social media. So if you just Google search Captain Fire, you'll find me. I always love getting in touch with people. So feel free to drop me a line and get in touch.
Awesome. Thank you.
No worries. See you, Anna.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invest or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etchman, who is an authorized representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorized representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing, so make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.